Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Healing the Hustle. Again, my name is Khari. I am a fitness program development professional. I have worked with people that want to establish work-life balance, being able to navigate their fitness journey. I've worked with athletes, and one thing that I noticed that pretty much was the same with everyone that I worked with, they were a person first. So whether they wanted to try to lose weight or they were trying to gain speed or gain muscle, they were a person first. So everything that happened in their life, also happened to affect the workouts. And so with that being said, outside of, I'm going to talk about some of my personal experience. A lot of what you're going to hear about today is just in general, when we're wanting to be healthy and wanting to be fit, there are different pieces that are going to fit together that are going to help us to do that. Okay, so I'm going to go into my opening slide. There we go, I think. Okay, so again, I'm a program development professional. I told you about my background in health and wellness. You'll also notice a picture of me here at the Lululemon store. I'm a Lululemon ambassador. And in general with that, it allows me to show and test a lot of the clothing of how it moves with you when you do your activities. Okay, so I'm going to start by locking in and telling you a little bit about my personal experience. So often when you are in the professional environment, when you are also working and trying to establish balance, you often get consumed in whatever your work style is. So with that, I was a small business owner, and I found myself working long hours, often sun up to sundown, doing different tasks throughout the day, and just realizing that being pulled in a lot of different directions, it got to a point where I just could not continue living that particular way to be able to sustain. And what you realize is that it's not about the volume of work. So say, for instance, I'm working from the time I wake up to the time I go to bed. It's more so some of the other things that I'm going to talk about managing our time and being able to also protect our level of productivity by pouring back into ourselves. So what may happen is when you are doing a lot of that, what grind culture teaches us is that by working, we're going to actually equate to productivity, but in general, it's going to be about the quality of work. So my personal experience with working really hard, working really long hours, having exhaustion, like if you watch my video, you can see in my face I was very tired, and being able to pull myself back from that. So the problem in grind culture is the fact that the whole ideal or the whole construct of it is false. So how many of us mistake exhaustion for achievement? Anybody? So when I go to bed at night, I'm super tired. I feel like I must have met my goal because I worked as hard as I could. Who equates exhaustion with achievement? Okay, all right. Okay, what if we could change that mindset and realize that success does not require us to sacrifice ourselves or overwork? That's not necessarily the way to be successful. Okay. All right, so let's dig a little bit more into the idea of grind culture. Okay, so what is grind culture? So I've used this term quite a bit this morning. Good morning. It is a mindset that emphasizes relentless work. So again, working from sun up to sundown, and that is the equation of me being productive. And that is the key to me being successful. It also glorifies the fact that you are working those long hours and the intense level of work that you're putting in. Again, finding that as your only pathway to being successful. And it's often at the expense of your personal well-being. So I talked a little bit about that. Often when you're so focused and driven on work, You're not getting sleep. You're not necessarily getting all of your meals in. You're not taking time to actually have moments of stress management. And that is grind culture. Let me grind, 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 grind. That is the way that I'm going to be able to meet my target date for getting my product to market and things like that. But as we know, everything takes time. And as long as we're intentional about working towards whatever our end goal is, we're going to eventually get there. But this is the mindset of basically putting it on the more extreme level of the spectrum. Okay, so let's get into some stats. So when we talk about grind culture, I want to reference this study. This study was done by the American Psychological Association, and this was during their 2021 Work and Wellness Wellbeing Survey, and it was done with about 1,500 U.S. workers, and this is what they found. They found that 79% of those people that took the survey, they experienced work-related stress. So that meant that they had stress that was literally related to their work environment or the nature of their work within the last month. So if we think about a calendar year, if that was only within the last month, that means that they're probably in a state of constant stress. Outside of that, 3 in 5 employees had reported negative impact of work-related stress, including lack of interest, motivation, or energy. So that meant that by going to work consistently and working at that level, they started to even lose, a level of interest in being there. And that's the point that we don't want to get to, is where we're not even interested in doing something that we may actually, at one point have loved. 36% reported cognitive weariness. So a lot of us do different tasks where our creative mind has to be active. And often in this state, you are putting yourself at risk for having that cognitive decline, which also can just lead to more frustration because you're trying to execute whatever it is that you're doing and you're having a hard time doing so. Okay, and then 32% emotional exhaustion, 44% physical fatigue. And this was a survey of 1,500 adult workers that took this survey. Do we have any questions so far? How are we doing? Okay. We're going to talk about more so like the baseline of the stats and stuff, but I promise by the time that we get towards the end, we'll get some light of how we can work out of this. Okay. An aspect of this overworking, the term is called burnout. So if you're in that constant state of not getting enough sleep, constantly working around the clock, you're putting yourself at risk for burnout. And what I like to point out is not all of our symptoms are necessarily physical. And sometimes when you are just continuously locked into what you're doing, you may not even be self-aware enough to feel whatever those feelings are, if they are physical, cognitive, emotional, mental, or behavioral, because you're just go, go, go. And so when it comes to breaking down these symptoms, I kind of want to just pull out a few from the categories. I named the global ones. It's not just going to be about your physical, about how you feel. It also could be cognitive. So some of those would be how we talked about before, having a hard time concentrating, or not being able to have the capacity to remember as many details. Things just become a bit more fuzzy when you're not able to pour into that time of self-care. Some of the behavioral things that you may see up there is that you're maybe trying to feel like you're catching up, and what you do is you may take away from other areas. So for instance, or example, someone invites you to go for a walk or to happy hour after work, and instead of going to take that time of enjoyment, you say, oh, well, I still have this project that I'm working on that instead I'd rather just stay and do that. So, those behavioral things where you're actually withdrawing from other things to be able to pour more into your work task. Some of the emotional and mental examples would be, overall, maybe just not being in the best mood. You're not feeling as though you have balance in other areas, and you're just, maybe not in the best mood. Or some things that you will see often and I would say are pretty prevalent, we don't really talk about it as much, is, one of the symptoms of burnout is having a high level or having persistent anxiety, sadness, depression that just equates with this state of being. Lastly, physical. This could be, again, like the physical aspects of exhaustion, like you feel low energy, you actually feel tired, or, you are actually just not ever feeling rested because you're not getting enough rest and sleep. But all of these together, I want you to be mindful and just honestly sit within yourself. And if you are feeling or experiencing any of these things, start to think about, like, do I feel as though I'm overworking? Because then I like to say, like, once we actually acknowledge things, that's when we can actually try to work towards having a better outcome or a different outcome. Good so far? Ready to move on? Okay. All right, so grind mode crossroads. I'm going to go back again to my personal experience. I've lived it. So I've told you about a lot of those symptoms of being burned out, overworked, all of those things. So, being overworked, overwhelmed, and feeling disconnected. I told you I am a fitness and wellness professional. I work in program development. I love working out. I love all aspects of wellness. And when it gets to a point where now you're feeling as though like you have to do something you love, that's when I started to really realize I'm burned out. I got to start doing some things differently. So last year, I trained for the Chicago Marathon. And along with training for the Chicago Marathon, I also raised the money for the marathon. I had never run a marathon before. So with setting that goal, I had to be honest with myself. If I did not make time to train for it, I was not going to be able to run that marathon in October. And with that, it was a blessing for me because I had to start really refining some habits. I had to make time, couldn't miss meals. I had to make sure I was drinking my water. I had to make sure that I set outside time outside of the things that I was doing for clients and for others to make sure that I made it to my personal and my group runs and did my, strength training. But all of that took a lot of rebalancing. So now we're going to talk about that. So you see my picture here. I did finish the Chicago Marathon, and that's me and my medal. I raised money for the charity of Project Purple, and Project Purple is an organization that benefits families and individuals with pancreatic cancer. And I also ran it in honor of my auntie. And I was able to do all of those things because I didn't want to let not only myself down, I didn't want to let other people down because, I would say that I had the most fun between mile 1 and 20, but then mile 20 to 26, that's when all of the no. Like my mom is actually here. She cheered for me, and she'll tell you, like, at each mile marker, I was smiling, I was waving. But by the time that I made it to mile 20, that was when the struggle happened. I had to really lock in mentally and finish the race. But I want to tell you that by reaching this goal, this was my first marathon. I became healthier and happier, and I became actually more productive. So even being able to prepare this information or prepare this presentation for you, I'm very proud of now how I'm able to show up even more as myself by reframing these things. So now we're going to break them down. I'm going to talk about the core needs, what I changed, and then also the result. So let's just talk about the core needs first. But this is what I call the performance and peace framework. So if I work on targeting these areas, it's going to help me to be not only more productive in whatever my project is, if I'm developing new software, if I am trying to just be more productive in my work environment, if I am a small business owner, I just want to make sure that I zone in on the fact you don't want to lose yourself in it and realize that the more that you take care of yourself, the better that you are for everyone around you, including whatever it is that you're trying to do. Okay, so core needs. We have stress management, we have boundaries, we have physical training, we have time management, sleep and rest, mindfulness, nutrition, and then our workload mindset. Okay, so let's start with stress management. We'll talk about what I changed. So stress management, what I changed, I identified the root of my burnout. And what that was, it was a lot of, and this is just me saying from my personal experience, it was a lot of overcommitment. I wanted to be everywhere, doing everything for everybody, and I just was kind of doing a lot. So with that being said, I looked at what things I could prioritize, and then I started to get into these other areas. But I had to identify that first. I didn't recognize it when I was in the midst of doing it. I'm popping up here, there, supporting this or supporting that, and you kind of get lost in the shuffle. I reduced my stress trigger. So again, by taking that moment of self-awareness, I won't even call it a moment, but taking that time of self-awareness, I was able to start identifying different things. One thing that, could be a stress trigger would be the fact that I knew I had to be up at a certain time. And so that then made me think, okay, that means that whatever else, you got to go to bed at a certain time because you can't necessarily get up as early as you need to if you don't have a cutoff time. But my result was I had less anxiety and more peace by focusing on stress management. Okay, so that's number one. Any questions about stress management?
I have a question.
Yes.
Okay. So I have like a career plan that I'm working towards.
Yes.
And I want to add in, health and wellness.
Uh-huh.
But I know like the check reward, like, okay, let's say for my career, 30,000, I want an additional 30,000. Right?
Okay.
And when I get there, then I know like I've made it. So how do you make those type of goals to make your health journey fun? Like, okay, when I did this, I made it. If it's not running the marathon.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I love that you asked that question. I like to also tell people that it's seasonal. You want to start to build. Everything is like a progressive overload. So what I would recommend to make your fitness journey fun is to set targets and just have it be basically a milestone for each step. So say for instance, for example, you haven't or you don't get 10,000 steps in a day. Maybe that becomes a goal because physical activity isn't necessarily structured or planned, but it's the fact that you're now being intentional and throughout your workday, your goal is taking breaks so that you make sure that you meet that 10,000 steps. Okay, I met 10,000 steps. All right, now, I'm meeting this easily. Let me boost that up to 14,000 steps. It's just progressively giving yourself stuff. All right, now I have all of my step goals. Maybe now I might try to attend a fitness class once a week. Oh, I've seen this mat Pilates class I want to go to, so I'm going to go. All right, I've been going once a week. Then you kind of just play these different games where you look at the things, for instance, that you may not be doing right there in that moment, and then you say, okay, let me challenge myself. Because what you like to do is give yourself some type of a reward in that by saying, okay, this is something that at one time I could not say that I was doing or could see myself doing, but look at me now. It's a very rewarding and enriching feeling to be able to do that. Did I capture?
Yeah.
That was a good answer. Okay. All right. Next we have boundaries. So boundaries are important. So that means that's protecting time. So I said no, and sometimes it's, having to let things play out and let others kind of figure out sometimes. So what that means is I had specific training times. I trained from this time to this time. And then I would do my admin from this time to this time. I knew that I had a 60-minute run. And once all of that cleared, one of my peaks of training was summer. I was running at 7 o'clock. So I had to start setting these different boundaries. And sometimes when those wires would try to cross, that's that aspect where I'm like, oh, well, no, I can't really do that. And then you start actually becoming more like stronger in your boundaries, because you recognize that saying no is not necessarily a negative. It's just me saying, hey, I may not have the capacity at this time to do this, or I just don't, I don't have it right now. But still keeping whatever your commitment is to yourself at that time. It's kind of, again, it's a balancing thing where you're going to always be in a space where you're pouring out, but you want to make sure that you're doing that where you're not doing it from an empty cup. Good with boundaries? All right. Physical training. We talked about step goals. We talked about marathons and different things. You want to make sure that you are doing an aspect of physical training. Some of the things that physical training does is not just about like your aesthetic or getting, just getting stronger on the outside. Physiologically, like your brain secretes endorphins and different things that help with your mood, your concentration, your focus. So taking that walking meeting, or actually taking that hour to work out, it helps over time to just help you to be, better as far as your stress management, mental health, all of that. So I definitely, of course, endorse doing some physical training. So for me, what I changed was I did my marathon training. Never ran a marathon before. If I didn't train, I don't think I would have been able to cross that finish line. So it was really important that I did that. And then the results was that it boosted my mood, my clarity, and my confidence. Because now I can say, like, even in the hard times, it got to a point where you identified a great word. It became fun. So when I ran those longer runs, I started to actually look forward to them. Whereas when I started doing base training in January, I was tired and it wasn't as fun because it felt hard. It'll get to a point where it's just gonna feel like something that you check off and you feel good about. Any questions about physical training? Okay. Time management. So time management, again, I feel like it kind of goes with boundaries a bit. It's good to schedule not just around. What I changed was I started to schedule around my energy rather than just my availability. Because sometimes when you're building a project, small business owner, work, whatever, there's this mindset where you just are I won't say expected, but I'll just use that word. It's kind of an expectation for you to almost just be widely available. And it's like, no, like you can identify some availability for each task or for each thing. And I want to put a pin here. That's even having time for your family, having time for yourself, having time to recharge. That actually needs to be something that you do managing your time, because all of those things are important. Because by taking those those break and rest times and connection time, it actually helps you to, again, show up to be more productive in that environment. Good? All right. And then the result was I felt prepared and present, because I always knew where I was going to be, what I was going to be doing. And I felt like I could turn things on and turn things off. So when it was time to go to do my run, I was able to focus on my run. When I got a chance to go hang out with my family and friends, I could be completely present in that. And it's really a great experience to be able to start to have a bit more, I don't want to call it mastery, because I don't feel like we ever really master anything, but having more of a bearing on how to have that time management. Sleep and rest. What I find is that often we will cut into our own sleep and rest to try to get something done. Whereas like we have our quality time through the day that we're actually going to be productive. I've seen some studies that say that contrary to what our traditional structure is, we're probably only peak productive when we look at a workday for about probably like 4 hours or so. So I want to say that as adults, I know like if you have children, like you may set a bedtime for them. You need to set a bedtime for yourself too, and making sure that you're getting in your adequate sleep. For most, like one recommendation is 7 hours. I would say that I feel the most rested when I get about 7 hours of sleep. And then outside of that, if you have a 10-minute break and you can take a power nap, like we shouldn't be against naps. Those are all going to be things that allow you to rest. I under this category, I would recommend things like desk meditations and just things that help you to, again, like go back to this stress management aspect. But one of my results was that I had better sleep and I felt less fatigued by putting in place that bedtime and honoring it. So I even had, for instance, I have an iPhone and I have a do not disturb. My bedtime, I'm sure it is 9:30. So I would turn off like my notifications for social media, but like I have my favorites where if it's an emergency, you're still gonna get through. But my phone is not completely just pinging, disrupting my sleep. All right, mindfulness. So mindfulness is showing gratitude, affirmation, and focus. This was something I always did, but I became more intentional about doing. So I would choose for instance, I use the Bible app. I choose a devotional from the Bible app, and I would do that every day in the morning. Who's familiar with Issa Rae? And are you familiar with her hype time when she's in the mirror and she just kind of just hyping herself up? That's me in the morning, like giving myself my affirmations and literally preparing and putting my armor on for the day. And just like my different focus practice, like when you start to become like more self-aware and notice your own sensations, you can actually feel yourself starting to get stressed. You can feel yourself losing focus, and then you're able to say, okay, let me do this quick breathing technique to get myself back locked in. All right, I'm back there. So what that helped me to do was to rewire my mindset. And in general, I would say like I'm just a lot more in tune with what I have going on, but also what's going on around me by doing those intentional times of gratitude, affirmation, and focus practices. Are we good so far? Okay. Nutrition. I ate well, but in general, like with this high kick up of my activity, I had to, prepare even more to eat throughout the day. So focusing on things like meal prepping, mostly fruits and vegetables, drinking water, my lean proteins. Those can be from plants or meat, but I ate consistently and intentionally. And what happened was it increased my physical energy increased and my mental clarity improved. So if you're getting anything from my framework here, this is a lot of things that impact you, as yourself, but then it also branches off to other people because then you may be cooking for your family. You may be cooking for, friends and things like that. And so those nutritional things that you may be eating, this I just made chili, so I'll just say this 3-bean chili. So now everybody else is eating it too, and so like now they're having a healthy meal, but it just becomes a more intentional practice, and you yourself are going to see the benefits. But then also, I just always want to say that it starts to spill out to your environment too. Last but not least, good morning. We have our workload mindset. I had to let it go of the do it all approach. Like, I can do it all. Nobody can do it all. So that means that when there's other deeper things that we could talk about, for instance, things like delegation, learning to ask for help when you need it. I actually had a friend help me out with something that I really needed help with. And, it's doing those different things. I can't do it all. I am very well versed in, for instance, like the things I'm talking about today, but there's been things that just were better for someone else to help me to take care of than me just try to do it myself. And so the result of that, I began to, everything seemed like is important to me, but I started to prioritize what matters, and it reduced me being overwhelmed. But all of these pieces together are what I call the performance and peace framework. Yes, ma'am.
Question. So going back to your sleep and rest section,
Mm-hmm.
I'm one of those people that are very guilty of not going to sleep at
Mm-hmm.
a decent hour to get up at
Mm-hmm.
a decent hour. So how do you make time to go to sleep when you know that you have something to finish? Like I go to sleep early sometimes, or try,
Mm-hmm.
but then I constantly say, oh, I didn't finish this, I didn't finish this, I have to get back up.
Yeah, I can identify with that. So one thing that I will say is it wasn't an overnight change. So what I did to get me started was I started by setting that alarm. But then over time, I started to honor it. And then I started to also identify the times during the day where I am the most productive. And then, like, one of my affirmations or my mantras is that I would say that, each day there's always going to be something for me to do. I'm never going to feel like I just, got through a day and it's like, oh my God, tomorrow I have nothing to do. So then you're able to kind of turn it on and turn it off and just realize that each day you are going to have, time to finish whatever it is that you need to finish. But right now, in that moment, your sleep and your rest is important. And it's like it gets smoother over time, because at first, like, it was hard for me to like turn my brain off. I'm thinking of like same thing, thinking about all the things I need to do the next day. Whereas in that moment, I need to be asleep. But it'll happen over time. Is that good?
Yes.
Okay.
Do you have this performance board available somewhere?
That's coming up next. Yep. I got it for you. I got it. Everybody good on this slide? Okay. Uh-oh. I'm still mixing up the buttons, and I'm almost at the end. Okay. So this is kind of like getting close to my closing slide. But you guys have asked really good questions. I want to also say that I've had a really great audience. But innovation can't be sustained by burnout. So again, that self-care aspect and making sure that we're getting all that framework in. But it thrives in rhythm, recovery, and resilience. So these are just some of my little emblems. I talked about how my long distance training, was time and effort. I literally trained from January until October. But within that time, I still had to live. So then I want you to think about whatever your project or your target is, and just remember that, that 6 months to a year, and this is based upon like the average company. It takes about 6 months to a year for you to go from launch to market. It takes about 2 to 5 years for you to go to drift into profitability. So within that time, just keeping in mind that it makes quote unquote sense for you to take care of yourself, to be able to carry yourself through the process of, we all like to say to trust the process, right? Anything we do is going to take time. So that is why we need to redefine the grind. So that's it. So I am going to open up for question and answer, but guess what? We have a workbook. So all of the peace and performance framework is going to be available in this workbook. So if you scan it, you're going to be able to download it. Please, please, please utilize this workbook. So if you identify with anything in my presentation and you're like, okay, I feel like I need to reframe some things, scan this QR code. You're going to be able to download the workbook. So I want you to take what you've learned, put it into action, use the workbook to create your own framework for boosting your productivity, cultivating peace, and enhancing your overall well-being. So make sure that you scan the QR code. And it should be a PDF that if you upload it into Adobe, you can type into it. If you download it, you can print it out. So if you're a person that writes or likes to type, it works either way. Well, that concludes my presentation, but I am open for questions and just to chat. So thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it. Yes, ma'am.
What are your suggestions for getting more sleep? Like if you work a full time, you have a hustle as well.
Mm-hmm.
And, to get more than 5 hours sleep, I just automatically wake up after 5 hours.
Okay.
And maybe that is because my brain is steadily gone.
Okay.
What are your recommendations? Like, I know you mentioned meditation and stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that. Do you think that all the different aspects that you had listed, when you align them all, that eventually your body body will just start shutting down the way it should.
I would say that once you start to go and put in place those different pieces, yes, it will be a gradual process. But then when it comes to sleep specifically, some people have their bedtime rituals. So that means maybe you might, for instance, lavender is relaxing. You might do, a lavender bath, which helps you to relax. You might do the chamomile tea or something like that that just starts to relate your brain to, oh, it's almost time for me to go to sleep. It's like the more that you ritualize it and you make it distinct in your day, that may help too. But everything is kind of gradual. So like creating some type of ritual that helps you to relax. But then also when it comes to sleep, you have your REM sleep and then you have your other phases of sleep. So even if you do wake up throughout the night, it's okay because as long as you're kind of getting those quality sleep. So REM sleep is typically like when you dream and like you're in that deep sleep, you're really resting. But, rituals and then also just gradually letting yourself start to find those gaps in your day. Good? Okay. Yes?
So when you talk about scheduling around your energy and not your availability,
Mm-hmm.
were you still using a method where you actually like planned out your day and you had a traditional schedule, or was it more so like I know typically I have more energy in the morning time between 10 and 12, so this is when I'm going to do, my most daunting project or whatever it is?
Yep. So it was kind of a mixture of both. So from, let's say, now my schedule's a little different, but maybe the first hour of my day, it would always be blocked because I know I'm going to be cooking breakfast, eating breakfast, getting dressed. Then, like you said, looking at my day is, never, every day is not going to be the same, but I know I'm the most productive during this time, this block. So then in your day, when you start to plan your day, you say, okay, these are the things that I need to do today. Let me make sure I do those between 10 and 12. So it still gives you that flexibility, but it's just like almost whatever like your visual cueing is. Like I have a planner, I have my written planner, and then I also have my Google Calendar because it helps me to visually look at, okay, I got to go to this, I got to go to that, I have to do this. And then when it comes to like my to-do list or my task, I do that. But then say, for instance, that you are leaving work at a certain time to, do family things. It starts to be like when someone asks you to do something and you are, at your child's soccer game, you have to just say like, thank you for letting me know that, that you were interested in this thing. I'll get back to you tomorrow during this time and this time. So like, it's a lot of balancing that goes into that. But those would be like the two sides of it that I say that that I have been working on. You're welcome. Any other questions?
Do you have a website?
I do. I have a link tree that I can send to you. Yep. Any other questions? Yes. Oh, and then I'll give you.
Is there like a specific type of scheduling you use? Because I know some people like actually say at this time I'm going to start this task, and then some other people use like block scheduling where they like block off a certain amount of time to do it. Like what helped you get to what style of scheduling works for you?
Again, you said a key thing. Like try those different frameworks or those different ways of doing it, and find the one that works best for you. So maybe you may try block scheduling and you're like, I don't really like this. Or, or you like to do tasks and, frame your tasks for each day. Or being able to say, like, I used Google Calendar and I like it better than Calendly or these other platforms. I would just recommend that now if that's something that you're working on and you're consciously trying to get to be a bit more smooth for you, just start trying those different ways of doing things, and then you can say, oh, I like this, and this is the way that I do it. Because of what I've noticed, the more that I've interacted with people is I'll say, like, what works for one person may not always work for the next person, but it may have the same premise. So now it's like, at least I'm scheduled and I have my stuff on my calendar, but the way that I like to stay on task may not be the same as someone else. Does that help? Okay.
I have one thing that I've been doing more so recently with my calendar.
Mhm.
So for your friends and family, they're the worst with planning stuff in your time, and they think that you're just supposed to be available.
Mhm.
So they have to send it to me the month before.
Okay.
My calendar shuts down. Like if you don't let me know, then that means that you wasn't planning it.
Okay.
So right now my calendar is pretty booked. I'm like, hey, I sent the message out like, hey, if you got something going on in October, you better let me know.
Mhm.
October 1st, it's November. We're
Yep.
start working on that calendar.
Mhm.
And that's kind of helped me manage my time a little better. And it kind of set those boundaries with people that's like, hey, one thing that I also did too is I scheduled an event and I let them know like, hey, on this day, like October 18th, I'm going to a cyber mill. Hey, on this day, I'm going to a cyber mill. If you're free to come, come. If not, that's when you'll see me.
Mhm. So, great. Thank you for sharing that. So, like, that was one way that she has basically, like, I picked out, you said boundaries, because now, because you know what you're going to be spending your time doing, you were able to extend invites, but then you also were just able to say, okay, this is what I already have set, but it's now a system. So the key is to find a system that works for you.
Yeah, I'm like hard stuff.
I was about to say, I like that.
So I've been doing it for about 6 months now. And I was like, hey, listen. And everybody at first they was like, what? Calendar invite? I got Google. I got this. Listen, send it to me. I'll put it in my calendar myself. But if you got plans, if you got something that's going on, then let me know. And I'll be there. I'll support you. However, you calling me the day of, it's not gonna work.
That's fair. Well, I have time. I think you raised your hand for a question.
Yes, ma'am. And you guys tagged on too. I said you didn't get there overnight. These were built on systems.
Yes.
I was going to ask you what type of inputs you use, resources to get you to each one of those points, because we all have those things. You mentioned Issa Rae. Overnight, listen to David Goggins or whoever. In that framework, you pick these things that helped you get through those trying times. Yes.
So key theme, when you guys go and do your workbooks, you're going to choose things that are personal to you. So like, I know that, for instance, like you picked out one person, like when I thought about my affirmations, my brain went to her, but then I know that I like the Bible app. And so when it came to my devotionals, it made it easy for me to pick. When you use a framework, it just gives you a chance to have, hey, this is a general structure, but you still want it to be personal to you so that it could actually be actionable to you. Because the same, say for instance, people or references, they may not speak to you, but I want you to pick people and references that speak to you. All right. So again, thank you, everybody. I'm going to kind of just start to close out. They gave me my 5-minute signal. If you guys don't mind, I would like to kind of get a picture of just everyone that attended today. And then, yeah, we can do up there. Let me see, I got to end this. How do we? Yes.